Good morning, everyone. manredFC back again. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been really busy. Haven't found time to do videos really. Been kind of locked in a battle of moving house, which I'm sure a few of you experienced. So it just takes so long, doesn't it? And things that you never thought would exist seem to crop up at the last moment. And basically, you're relying on other people to do their jobs properly, aren't you? So, c'est la vie, we're back. We're on a Sunday, I think. All the days are merging into one. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to, I suppose, review where Manchester United are at the moment. I think after 5 games, obviously one in the Champions League. And then I'm going to do one probably about the league at some point as well over the next week or so. There's obviously a lot of reactionary stuff that goes on online, after every result, before every game. The transfer market. Do you know what? I was going to do a video on the transfer market actually about ITKs and all the people in the know, and it's just such nonsense, isn't it? That you think, why would you bother? People claim to know someone, and there are so many supposedly credible people that release information, and then it doesn't happen, and they're like, oh well, anything can happen in football, and it's like, well, anyone can make up a rumour. Well done. So I was convinced that obviously we were going to get Sancho just because it made logical sense, and not buying an established right winger was a bit crazy for me. But the silver lining was signing 2 young players, and I'm very much a throwback in that I like signing players that are less well known, that have got a lot of room to grow into. I've never really been one for buying the kind of the star, the ready-made player. It's not really my sort of thing. And it's one thing that I've always enjoyed about Manchester United of old, underneath Sir Alex Ferguson. So, with Pellistri and Diallo, I think that's exciting. Who knows? It could go either way, but it's exciting. And I suppose if it came down to it with Sancho, where he said he's not coming now, do we buy second choice or wait? You can kind of understand why we would wait. Because if you really want him, do you sign someone as a stopgap for 6 to 12 months and then go and get him? But then obviously the counter argument is that you're leaving your right wing bereft for a season, essentially. Obviously, this is not a Glazers or Ed video. That needs to be a separate one. Failings on all part across the board there. But it's been one of those starts to the season for everyone. So it's making me feel a bit more... I suppose I'm taking a bit more of a step back about Manchester United and not being as emotional about it, because everyone's had their ups and everyone's definitely had their downs. So we're 5 games in. This is just following the match yesterday that I didn't get to watch, sadly. But I saw a lot of highlights, extended highlights, and saw that it was 0-0. And I know there's been a lot of negative reaction online. And obviously when you don't win at home, and it's a record for a number of years where you haven't won at home, I think it's since 72 or 73, that we haven't won at home, but then it's 10 consecutive wins away that we haven't ever done in our history. So there's 2 sides to the story there. I'm not really on the negative bandwagon. The only thing that's concerning me is selection. But we are still so early that after 10 or 15 games, it could look completely different. I've certainly been caught in the past before. So just looking at the table, obviously we're 15th at the minute. 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. And it's the defence that's killing us, isn't it? I mean, obviously that Tottenham game was a big problem because it's made it, and it's kind of skewed it so it looks far worse than it is. But I think the troubling fact of that game was just how quickly the towel was thrown in. We went 2-1 down, didn't we? Martial gets sent off, 3-1 down, and then it's kind of like our players have gone, well, we're not getting back in, so we may as well just not bother. And that's not befitting of United players for me, but that can happen. And I think what everyone's got to establish themselves now is that we aren't the same team. And this is what frustrates me about pundits as well, that they think that we're still challenging for a league, or that we should be. What about the last 7 or 8 years tells anyone that we should be challenging for a Premier League title? Because the way I see it is we're a club very much on the upward kind of trend of the curve, trying to get towards the summit, which is where Liverpool is. So how anyone could say, oh, Manchester United They should be doing that. They should be closing the gap on the top. It's like, well, actually, yes, that should be an overall goal, but our ownership and our kind of path so far has been anything other than elite. So, yes, we finished third, and I'd want to see progression on that. But challenging? What, are we 30 points off? I don't think so. And as long as we react to a result like this positively, and we did against Newcastle and Paris Saint-Germain, then you'd have to say that it's not a mentality issue. It might be a consistency issue. But I'd have to say that actually with certain players, I'm quite confident that we will always compete. Where I have an issue is not the result, it's the manner in which we lose games. And with certain players, which we'll go through in a minute, I'm not convinced that they're up for the battle. Whereas I think others that are less talented, let's say, are far more likely to put in a shift, as you say, put themselves about and make it difficult. I mean, there's nothing worse than coming off of a pitch and thinking, wow, that was actually quite easy. They never closed me down. I had so much space. I mean, I'd rather play against someone that had far more talent but gave me time than someone that had less talent and was constantly around my feet giving me no time, because obviously then it limits my game. But alas. So, not a brilliant start for Manchester United, but obviously what you say to that is that Man City, who are miles ahead of us, are a point above us. Similar shaky start. Arsenal are only 2 points above us, and people are saying what a wonderful start they've had. Same with Leicester City. Chelsea are only 2 points ahead of us, and they've played one more game. Frank Lampard has spent 250 million. So what I will find interesting over the next few months is actually where does the expectation lie in comparison? Because we've got a direct comparison here, Frank Lampard or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Who should be under more pressure? Now for me, where the clubs are at the minute, it should be Frank Lampard, because he's spent £250 million this window just gone, adding into Pulisic as well. So it's what, 300 million? Ollie hasn't. Yes, I'd argue that the expectation and the worldwide kind of heritage of Manchester United is more successful, although you'd argue that recently. That expectation can't be placed on Ollie. He hasn't been backed properly in the market, and we need to understand that. So for me, if we're in this similar sort of area in the table, then there should be more talk about Frank getting sacked than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer from supposed experts and pundits, because that just makes sense to me. I don't know about you. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few matches. Obviously, Everton, fantastic, flying at the top there. Liverpool doing what they usually do. But again, rocky start, really poor against Villa. No Van Dijk. And no Alisson. They look obviously a completely different side there. So it's extremely interesting. I mean, the one thing that really irritates me about Manchester United, and it really does, is just we spent 30 million on Luke Shaw. It hasn't worked, in my opinion. I don't particularly rate him, and I think his mentality has taken a knock. And I don't think he's got a mentality off the pitch that he should have for a top echelon athlete. You've got Eric Bailly, who consistently gets injured all of the time, so you cannot rely on him. A bit like Phil Jones, who's not even registered in the squad, yet we're paying him, 70 grand a week, which I find remarkable. Then you've got Victor Lindelof, who's constantly going through the wash of he's not good enough, he's had a really good game, he's the Iceman, he's terrible, 37 million. You then got a partner alongside him in Harry Maguire, who's 80 to 85 million, who, in my opinion, has been a woeful signing for the price. Is he a £40 million centre-back? Absolutely. I'd say he's on a par with Victor Lindelof. Harry Maguire likes to be a ball-playing centre-back. So does Victor Lindelof. So who is covering? Who's covering the other one? No one? Neither have got the recovery pace. So as a partnership, they don't work because they both want to go and play. But no one's got the thought of, well, if Lindelof's playing, I need to come in behind. Or if I'm playing and I'm Maguire, Lindelof needs to come in behind. And that's why Axel Tuanzebe plays so well. But this is an academy player. If you combine Maguire and Lindelof, that's £130 million for centre-back. And we had Lindelof before we bought Maguire. So you're kind of thinking, who's decided that that's a good signing? And don't get me wrong, when you go through the list of our centre-backs, Harry Maguire is probably just about at the top of it. So in terms of personnel, he's probably one of the highest. But in a club where we've consistently seen there has to be a balancing of the budget, why on earth would you commit £85 million to a centre-back that marginally improves the overall kind of selection that you've got, but doesn't provide anyone else with a good partner to play with? Because we're still going into a transfer window saying we need another centre-back. We need someone with pace. And I've even said I want Upamecano for that reason. But then what about Eric Bailly, who was 40 million, let's say, round up. Lindelof, who's 40 million. Harry Maguire, who's 85. That's 165 million. And we're still going, yeah, we haven't quite got it right. And you're thinking, who's putting this together? Who's thinking about this? And it's worrying to think that no one might be. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's fine at right back, and I think he's got good understudies in Williams and Ethan Laird. So that's fine for me. I don't have to worry about it. And obviously Alex Telles, I think, is a wonderful signing at left back. I've never been a fan of Luke Shaw. I don't think he's going to change his game now. Left centre back, he's okay because he's got the protection of two people next to him, and he doesn't have to do the job of a left full back or left wing back bombing on and overlapping. He doesn't like doing both sides of the job. He can't do both sides of the job at top level, which is what Manchester United need, especially if we're expecting them to start climbing above third. You go into the midfield. Now, Matic is probably in his last season, rightfully so. He's getting on. Good player at what he does. He's the only natural person that sits in front of the back line and kind of screens and watches the danger and isn't interested in playing beautiful passes or scoring goals or making assists, where I think a lot of our other players are. So they neglect that duty. So that's why I think Matic is important. Fred and Scott, as a two, can fulfill Matic's role because obviously they're both busy, they're both intelligent enough to fit in and screen when the other one goes. The only concern with that is a lot of it is reactive. So against PSG, you saw Scott McTominay kind of getting turned by Neymar. And, you know, let's get this right. There are a lot of players that will be turned by Neymar. And it was last ditch. It was last ditch challenge. Or you had Fred running back as quickly as you can, high energy, last ditch challenge. And although that's okay because it was successful and it was a fantastic performance, it's not a natural position where you're thinking, yeah, I'm really settled here. My back two, and I've got a central defensive midfielder in front. We're really solid here. So the midfielders in front can go and play. And because we need to use two of them in Fred and McTominay, we lose an attacking role ahead of them. And I don't think Fred or McTominay are very good or effective or prolific at providing assists, shots or goals or key passes. Scott may improve that, and I like Fred's tenacity, and he's very industrious, and he can play quick play, and he can play all along the width of the field. But you know, we've seen he's not very prolific at kind of the business end of the pitch, as it were. So they're kind of doing a role that one does with Matic, with both of them. But I much prefer them than a Matic, simply because they're much better at nullifying the opposition. But when I think about Manchester United, I don't want a midfield that nullifies the opposition. I want a midfield that dominates. So that's still a position that we need to fulfill when we're moving forward. You've obviously got Bruno Fernandes ahead of them. Now, I think the reason why the CDM is so important with him is because he gives the ball away quite often, because he takes risks a lot of the time. Gets a lot of goals, gets lots of assists, takes the set pieces. But he'll happily try and spray a pass that way. Get it wrong, I'll do it again. Get it wrong, I'll do it again. Get it wrong, I'll go that way. Get it wrong, I'll do it again. And he'll keep doing it. And then you're relying on everyone else to keep winning the ball back and giving it to him. But because he has got that unerring confidence and the ability and the vision, you kind of say, go on, Bruno, because you're more than likely to win us a game than I will. But the only issue with that is you've then got Paul Pogba on the bench. And I agree with that decision, by the way. I don't think Paul Pogba should be anywhere near our starting lineup. Talent, obviously one of the best in the squad. Output, atrocious. £90 million. You're not worth 45 for what I've seen at Manchester United. You come onto the pitch, and from what I see of you, you've got an unbelievable ability at screening the ball and doing whatever you want with it. Shooting, passing, running, tracking back. But you decide to whenever you want. It's not a consistent thing for you. I don't think that being the absolute best is an ambition of yours. I think that you complement a very, 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 very talented team that's got hard workers in there. aka Conte for France. I think Paul Pogba makes a good side better, but he does not make an average side good. And at the minute, with Manchester United, we're kind of between the average and good, aren't we? So Paul Pogba sometimes becomes a liability. So I wouldn't ever start him, personally. And to be honest, for me, I'd sell him. I've had enough of him. Please go somewhere else, and probably do very well. You got then Van der Beek, who I really rate and have always liked at Ajax, who just is a box-to-box player with that creative and prolific output, sat on a bench. Now, I won't get too into this yet because we're only 5 games in, but it doesn't scream to me like an Ollie signing so far. And if it is, why was it the first one? And why was it for £40 million? If you're thinking about we're only spending this much net, why have you put 40 million on top of Van der Beek, who's not started properly? How many minutes has he played? Probably less than 80 minutes worth of minutes, potentially. Been effective, but isn't starting. He has to displace Bruno Fernandes. He doesn't displace Fred or Scott McTominay unless we're playing an opposition where the threat isn't in the midfield. So he will miss out on a few games. So what was the point of signing him to sit him on a bench? Especially when he's better than the players we're bringing on ahead of him. I much prefer Van der Beek than Paul Pogba. Not because I think he's more talented, but I think I'll get more out of him. And I think he'll raise the game of everyone else higher than Paul Pogba will. I think another issue with Paul Pogba is everyone else just goes, oh, we can relax a bit now. Paul's on the pitch, give him the ball. And they just drop 5%. Whereas I think Van der Beek, he's so industrious that it might raise you 5%. And obviously the whole team rising is far more effective than one player and everyone else slumping back, especially if he's having an off game and he's the most inconsistent £90 million player I probably ever see. You've got Marcus Rashford, who, again, he's a difficult one, isn't he? His mentality is unbelievable. And I remember a few years ago when he and Jesse Lingard were kind of close, weren't they, in the squad? Obviously, he's a lot younger, but they were kind of both in and out. And I was worried, and I remember saying this to my friend, I worry that if Marcus gets Jesse Lingard's mentality, he's not going to make it. So he has to be the one that rises, because he'll leave Jesse Lingard behind. Lo and behold, Jesse Lingard hasn't seen the light of day, and he's languishing in the squad, basically just being a training figure, a training cone for the other players to work around. And Marcus is obviously doing very well, on and off the pitch, and you have to say what he's done off the pitch is wonderful. My only issue with Rashford is he's not prolific enough, and we really rely on him to be. Is he a centre forward or is he a left winger? Against PSG, I thought he was very good, but again, his decision making wasn't the best. Whether that's a confidence thing, I don't know, but the ball was there to be released. He'd release it at the wrong time, or he wouldn't shoot, or he'd run into a cul-de-sac. And with his pace and ability to strike, I'd much rather see him just get a shot off, test the keeper, or run at a fullback, or run at the defender. And obviously when he did decide to do that against PSG, he won us the game and it was fantastic. Against Chelsea, he was on biggest threat, wasn't he, with the 2 shots, along with Juan Mata. Good saves by the keeper. But again, I just want to see a bit more quality in the finish. And I might be asking a bit too much because, to be fair, he was the only one that was really doing it. But I think because of what I've seen and he's so explosive and electric, I'd just like to see him really push on now to become an Mbappe type level, if he can. Martial, I really like him. Obviously, when he wants to be, he can dribble past anyone and score when he wants. But again, I've had enough of these when he wants to be players, much like Paul Pogba. Why can't we have players that are always a 7, 8 out of 10? No one's telling me that talent-wise, Martial isn't up there with a Werner or an Aguero. I know Aguero is more of a 9 and more of a natural goal scorer. But if you're looking at talent, players have always said how good Martial is in tight spaces and how cool a finisher he is. It must be a mentality thing. And again, that's a worry. He did really well last season, but I think that's the best you'll ever get from him. I don't think he'll get better than that. And again, you've then got another £60 million player who's mid-20s, who again, is he a starter? Probably not. If Cavani comes in and does really well, he'll displace Martial, because he will. He's a target man. But then So it's another difficult one, isn't it? Martial he seems to just drift in and out of games, and he hasn't got that real elite mentality that we're used to seeing at Manchester United. So that's a concern. Whether or not Ollie's got centre forward shoehorned for someone else, hopefully Erling Haaland, we don't know. But again, that's been a bit of a mess. Cavani, if that was an Ollie signing, why did it happen at the end? Are we really looking at saving wages and then throwing away games just to save a bit of money? And if we are, that's a big problem. Why did we extend Ighalo to January if he was definitely on our list of players to sign? Well, the answer is he wasn't. We just got to the end of the window and they probably said, we've got an opportunity to get Cavani. And Ollie went, well, yes, we need someone. So uninspiring, that signing, but you'd have to say better than what we've had. Right wing, Dan James for me, although he's naturally better on the left, he's just not good enough. He's a transition player, very quick, very effective, but the way we play isn't good enough. Obviously, Mason Greenwood at the minute's got all of his issues, hasn't he? So we don't know how he's going to come back. So again, that right wing role could either be very good for us with Palestri and Diallo coming in January and Greenwood then growing back into the role, or it could be one of those where you go, well, Palestri's not even ready. Diallo's not coming till January, then he's going to need at least 6 months to 12 months. Mason Greenwood, with everything that is going on, he's getting vilified for. His mentality might not be there. And you're then relying on Juan Mata, who's not going to be able to play 2 or 3 games a week, although I think he's been very good. But again, he's not a right winger. He never has been, but he was still playing him there. And I thought that we were signing Sancho in the summer just gone. The only thing I can see is that he is still our number 1 target and we're waiting to January, or we're waiting to the summer to buy him. I mean, obviously my ideal January or the summer would be you buy up a Meccano, an Erling Haaland and a Sancho, and you kind of go tick, 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 and then maybe get a CDM to really shore that up. But obviously it's very unlikely with how Manchester United operate in the transfer market. So yeah, it's been good. Up and down. I think I'm pleasantly surprised by the Champions League because I didn't think we'd make the group, and we still might not, but we've given ourselves a really good opportunity. And I think just the quality of the league has probably just delayed my frustration, because yes, we've started poorly, and any other season, if there was a really consistent team, you'd be like, yeah, we're in trouble. But actually, we're only 6 points off of top after a horrific season and a horrific start to the season, you'd say, in the league, and only a few points off of the key players. I mean, my expectation is that we finish 3rd or above again. Some of you may think you're having a laugh, Andy, and you're probably right, but with our squad, if it's managed well, and if we can get Tellers playing consistently, and I think we should, because his delivery is fantastic and he's just streets ahead of Luke Shaw, then I think he adds another dynamic. So I think the next few fixtures are going to be important. Obviously, we've got Everton, we've got Leipzig, we've got Arsenal. So we've got quite a few big games coming up. If we can get through those and maybe get to kind of the 10-game mark and still be 1 or 2 points off and be looking pretty in the groups, and you've got to be quite happy with that going into January, because that's another thing. I mean, the summer ended, everyone's furious about the transfer signings, myself included, but actually it's October the 25th, so with an international break in there, we've got 8-9 weeks until we can potentially sign again. So as long as we're not miles away, you'd have to say it's been okay. You're just hoping that the powers that be actually then back Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I think, again, he's done fairly well so far. Yes, he's made some very odd decisions, some very odd selections. But I think he is just challenging the apple cart. He's saying who does want to play, who's got the mentality to play. And if you haven't, you won't. And that's what's impressed me, seeing Paul Pogba on the bench, because a lot of other managers just play him and kind of crumbled his demands to stay here. Whereas I don't think Ollie's that sort of character. And if it does rub him up the wrong way, and anyone else, Romero, I think Romero was treated poorly by the club. But again, Ollie's not afraid to just leave them out of the squad. And that's testament to him. I think eventually it will breed a better mentality. It's just time that it's going to take. And we're still 3 or 4 players away. But as I said, we've got 2 months for some of the other players to improve, come in, gel, see how we get on. Of the games we've had over the last 3, after the terrible Spurs performance, you'd have to say 2 wins and a draw was probably, out of those fixtures, unlikely or unexpected. So you can't really complain. A win against Chelsea would have been nice, but they spent 250 million and they came to basically sit behind the ball. Some of just the level of kind of criticism and how it's distributed is clear to see when you see that performance yesterday from Chelsea. They offered nothing, and certain other clubs or managers would get absolutely ripped apart if they attempted that. But it's Frank Lampard. It's a masterclass, and they've come and got the job done. And you're thinking, well, actually, United are getting pounded from pillar to post for having such a poor start in the Premier League, and it's not been good. But you've played a game more and you've got a point more. Not exactly great, is it? But the nature of their quality and the nature of the players they've got, you can only see them improving if they get the defence right. So that's probably the counter argument to that. So far 5 games in. Obviously 15th isn't looking brilliant, but you've got to look beyond the positions so far. We've got to judge it again after 15 games, I think. If we can get through the Champions League group and basically stay 1 or 2 points behind Man City, that's my barometer actually, City. If we can stay 1 or 2 points behind them, then I'll be quite happy with that by the time we get to January. So yeah, it's been kind of a little review of where we are. I think Henderson as well will take over De Gea, but that'll come over time, and I think we're seeing an upturn in De Gea's performances now because of that. So it's not looking too bad. It could be a lot better. But the reality is that football's all over the place. Real Madrid in the Champions League losing. Home records are through the floor. It's not usual football. It's a different animal now. So we've kind of got to get used to it, and I don't think dominance really exists anymore. So as long as we can stay within touching distance, then I think we're okay. Because again, I think for this season, with what I've seen, top 4 is a definite. 3rd and above is an expectation, but a title challenge is not for me. Although I do think it's an opportunity for a lot of clubs to try and do this season, because I don't think there's a runaway. So yeah, I'll probably do another video again. I just thought I'd rant my thoughts there. So again, thank you for watching. This has probably gone cold now, but that's okay. See you again soon.